Going live. We're live.
All right. All right.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to our March 9, 2023 TIFA meeting. Let's start out with a call to order and roll call. Who's up?
Here. Seaford.
Here.
Chamberlain.
Here.
Ralston.
Here.
Estelle.
Here.
Anton.
Here.
Robson. Here. And Chairman Olin.
Here.
And Chairman Hughes.
Here. All righty. The first item is the approval of the minutes from the January 12, 2023 meeting. Before we move to a motion to approve, is there any comments? There's no comment. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Can we take a roll or can we just say?
Voice vote's fine.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. None opposed. All right. Next item on the agenda is for public comment. Is there anyone available or seeking public comment?
Go ahead, now it's your chance.
I'm afraid to go on the record.
It's typical. No public comment, so we'll move to the next item. Let's take it from here. Warren, a review of the Maryland Lake Point lot site plans.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to combo these next two in one. So at our last meeting, the board did approve a development agreement between the Grosse Pointe Park Business District Improvement Foundation and the TIFA. That development agreement was to complete the development of a parking lot that is currently properties that are owned by the TIFA and the foundation, and it would be one uniform development incorporating high-end for parking lot standards, finishings, permeable pavers, extensive landscaping, and take essentially double the amount of parking that was on site. Now, as part of that agreement, the remaining portion was the submission of a site plan as well as the execution of kind of development agreement part two, which is this project financing agreement. So we talked, at length in our last meeting about the financial arrangements and the site plan, and today we're here to review the plan as well as take potential action on the financing agreements. So happy to answer questions.
Real quick. Everyone had a chance to review these, and there were some very good inputs. Question, there were some inputs about the ADA spots, handicap spots. We've gone from how many to how many?
Yes, so in the plan I sent out a few weeks ago was 53 total parking spaces. One of the things that wasn't caught when that was a smaller number before, it was a 47 or 48. Once we break the 50 spot barrier, there is a additional ADA spot required. So that, although it doesn't show on the plans, that will be required as part of the site plan. And one of these three will actually be an ADA van accessible spot as well, because that's what the code is. So that has been, it doesn't show on here, but it's going to be, it is a provision that as the city engineer reviews this for all those types of compliance things, it has been noted and communicated with the PEA group.
There was another comment about the width of the driveway, that the width might be a little wider than it's required, and if that's the case, other buffers or barriers can be moved or adjusted. Help me understand the width of the drive from 20 and a half or so to 24.
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to the
Main thoroughfare.
the main thoroughfare, the concrete. So yes, so as shown on the plans, there's a 24-foot wide thoroughfare that will be paved in concrete. We kind of looked at this kind of threw me at first too. Our ordinance calls for a minimum of 20 feet. So it's what is the additional feet for? And in speaking with both PEA and the city engineer, OHM advisors, and knowing that our zoning ordinance is rather old, there's a lot of archaic references or just simple standards from yesteryear essentially in it, that a new standard would likely be around 24 feet. I don't have the luxury of owning a F-150. Many people do, and as we have, that type of larger vehicle, it was thought to, that was what was recommended by both OHM and PEA. There was some comments on the landscape buffering, and the wall. So I wanted to touch on that. Our code, and we, again, on this project, we're doing everything we can to follow our code to the letter. The code actually calls for the installation of a brick wall on the property line. The spacing on the Lake Point side where that wall is, it's very, very close to the house. There's just a small wooden fence and some arborvitae's there. Now there's not a lot of room, but on the other side, the Maryland side, the parcel immediately south of this, ornamental wall, for lack of a better phrase, it's there. There's just a garage that is set back on the alleyway. And the city actually has an agreement with that property owner to put, right now there's a decorative wood fence up to kind of help shield the parking lot from the view of the residential neighborhood. That fence actually allows the city to go and install it on their property. So as we kind of contemplate this further, I think that is a good mechanism and avenue for that we do want to install some. There's a lot of landscaping on the interior side of the wall. If we wanted to do landscaping on the exterior side of the wall, help just kind of, break up the transition between the commercial area and the residential area. Again, there is that, because we do have that, I don't know if it's an agreement or an easement exactly, we do have that way of, pursuing that further, so we could actually add some landscaping to the other side of the wall, in particular on that side. So that's definitely something we can pursue. And like I said, that arrangement is with the city. So I'll put my city manager hat on and take off my TIFA director hat to work on accomplishing that piece.
So that would just be that lower, for looking at this, rendering the lower left corner?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, that lot's almost all grass except for an old garage that is set back right on the alleyway. There's no, unlike the other side on Lake Point where there is a house right next door, there's no structure, at least occupied structure that's right there on the other.
So there is substantial landscaping and vegetation and quite a number of trees. Also, too, tell me about the area between the parking and the alley. There's a fairly significant elevation change between the parking lot and the alley.
Yes. There will be several feet. Essentially, the existing grade closest to the south side is kind of going to be remained. And the stormwater feature of this is actually, it's going to drain away from the residential properties and it'll go towards that north bank of parking spaces. That's where the permeable pavers and the stormwater utility system are going to be installed. So again, we're kind of taking advantage of the natural grade difference now. Obviously, we're going to smooth it out to make it function, but that will cause in that extensively landscaped area where kind of like where the DTE poles are now, right getting into that alleyway. That's where the big grade change is going to be. It's going to be.
So in that grade change, in that area, you have a grade change and the DTE poles. So that's you kind of need that space. You almost have 512 elevation change, right? 5 feet over 12, almost 4 or 5 feet, almost 4 or 5 feet in a 13-foot span. So that's not a flat surface. Okay. Also, two questions. There was also some suggestions about possibly moving the location of the dumpsters from the outer areas where they're fairly well shrouded and covered and gated to perhaps an inner area. What was the feedback on that?
So this is a more tricky one, just the dumpsters, because it's hard to, wherever you put a dumpster, there's going to be, it's going to be a high. That's where you put the dumpster, they're kind of just a part of doing business in a commercial area. And in other developments on the other side of Kirchville, in those parking lots, there was significant feedback that was generated on having the dumpsters on the
business side?
Yeah, not on the business side, but on the residential side. So much so that in that case, the developer ultimately ended because the word dumpster doesn't appear in our zoning ordinance. That's how old it is. We don't have rules. So again, we're trying to every property is, evaluate what's the highest and best use location for the dumpster enclosure. So in here, we did not want to push them any closer to a residential property than we had to. And then why are they kind of more near the side, near the street entrances? Where they could maybe be located more in the center. The single biggest reason for that was the effect of garbage trucks on any sort of paved surface, whether it's asphalt, concrete, or brick paver. The deterioration from and wear and tear from those trucks can be very significant. So again, although the dumpsters are fairly close to the streets, they will be enclosure, they will be gated. There is landscaping surrounding them. We might even be able to put a tree in the right of way to kind of help shield, but we kind of thought that we're going to protect this asset. It made sense to minimize the area where those trucks were going to be entering, and
The trucks probably wouldn't go into the middle if there's one car in the way. I mean, as working with dumpsters and garbage removals, any chance that they have to not pick it up, they're gonna take it.
And we did even look at doing the alleyway, putting them instead of having the driveways come in from the parking lot, come in from the alleyway. But again, there are DTE poles there, so you can't do the dumpster thing without taking out the power in town.
Clearance.
Yeah, there's not enough clearance in that case.
Not to mention, they're not usually terribly careful, so with all this beautiful landscaping and everything else that we're going to have in here, I've seen way too many trucks in our parking lot at work that just go over curbs, taking out trees. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And again, we really want to be sensitive to the residents right there. We did not want to put the dumpsters in the back. We wanted to make them as close to the commercial, users and generators of waste as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
question for Warren. Speaking of dumpsters, now with the dumpster that's behind Point Hardware and the grease bin, will be relocated over here. Is that
That
correct?
is correct. That is currently the dumpster for Park Grill. So now that will be put right there. We won't have a dumpster.
That's kind of a
in that
landmark.
site.
I don't know.
I'm okay with it moving. Warren, if I can chime in a little bit, I think a lot of their comments are directed towards me and the professional planner in the room. Couple of things I will disagree with. One is the aisle widths. 24 foot wide is basically a road. Those are two 12-foot lanes. And so in what I've seen in our zoning ordinances that we enforce is that it is a 20-foot wide parking lane is standard, because you aren't having two lanes of passing traffic. You're literally having a single vehicle pulling in and out. So what I was trying to do is buy as much space on the south side to widen that buffer so that we're having the least impact on the adjacent property owners, which I think is good public policy. It is also what a planning professional is expected to do. Regarding the dumpster locations, we always require dumpsters, and zoning ordinance is very specific about dumpsters not in front yards, and we're putting them in the front yard. And so that's why we were trying to locate them towards the alley where they'd be able to be out of the way, because what's going to happen is anyone walking by on the sidewalk is going to go right by these dumpsters. A gate is still a gate versus if there's a 20-foot landscape buffer, which is what it would be. If you relocated the dumpsters towards the alley, you would also pick up potentially 6 additional parking spaces, because we lose spaces where they are located. And then the concern about parking in front, that's alleviated by a sign that says no parking. You're going to get a ticket if you park in these 4 parking spaces from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. when the dumpster company is coming to pick it up, because they schedule it and they are, pretty much on time, because they know they have to clear them, because some people are putting their dumpsters out. They're on a set schedule. So the 2 things I was trying to do is minimize the impacts of the dumpsters on the entire area on a regular basis, and then also provide as much buffer on the south. And the buffering is to be a 20-foot setback. That's in our zoning ordinance. And there is supposed to be a wall that blocks a low wall that blocks the view of the parking lots from the adjacent roadways, the adjacent neighbors. So that's where the thinking that they're responding to comes from.
Can I ask a question? I guess it's a question. And I'm not a planner, so I don't know, how much space is required for things, but you said that there would not be two vehicles going in separate directions. I mean,
There are not two vehicles driving at 25 miles an hour
okay.
on a road, which is why you
I see.
have
Okay.
12, why you have those wide lanes.
Mhm.
You have cars in a parking lot going 8-10 miles an hour. So you don't need as much. They're not turning into the space from the lane they're in. They're going to cut over and then turn in.
I mean, idealistically, yeah.
Correct. I mean, you can't turn right and get into a 90-degree parking space.
Right.
You
Well,
do
depending
have
on
to,
the-
yeah.
Bigger cars, definitely.
No.
Thank you.
So we're not really here to approve this tonight, or are we?
The way the agreement is essentially, phrased is we can move forward. I certainly, the design review has not been 100% finished on the city engineer's part. There's still a few housekeeping items to attend to. So it's not,
Is it going to go before the planning commission?
it's not designed to, no. That's the side parking lots in our zoning ordinance. The one thing that is in there is those are reviewed by the Department of Public Services, which is the city manager's office,
Okay.
essentially, no, but that's specifically what the health code is written on parking lot site plans.
Because I would say upon approval of the planning commission, I think we should leave it in their court, but that's part here.
Okay, so,
Yeah, so, essentially, again, I think we can communicate, these comments, I absolutely think there's value to them. And, moving things around, potentially, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver on this one. But that's why, again, knowing that these comments were going to be there, I did start reaching out to PEA group, talking about kind of what's the chain of thought here? What kind of options are we highlighting? That's why I wanted to talk about the outside and the existing agreement with, for those vegetation and things. Yeah, I don't see if I say, hey, can we shrink this a little bit, the travel lane, and now suddenly they have a few hundred square feet less of concrete that they have to put in. They might not object to that, that's a cost savings, for sure. And I think that would also accomplish what we're doing.
so directionally, this is kind of where things are going. And Arthur too, one thought about the dumpsters, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I don't disagree with it. I'm looking at it kind of from a practicality perspective. And yeah, if I walk by a dumpster, in the summer, I might have an aroma as I'm walking by it. But walking by it and then passing it is one thing. Having it next to my backyard 24/7, I guess, is another. So that's the one thing that I'm thinking about is, for me as a resident, I'd rather not have a dumpster on my property line. I'd rather have it as far away from my property line as I can.
Right, but the one house is
And another-
as a
And the only
garage.
another one, the other area is an empty lot now, and it could be a house at any time if someone chooses to build one. And the other thought too is, I understand exactly your point about having no parking from this time to that time. Again, a car gets parked there late, there's someone Ubers home because, they don't want to drive, and it stays there, and they come get it the next day, midday or whatever. And that window, and yeah, there's a ticket, but the garbage doesn't get collected, or no parking on this day from this time to this time, but then there's a holiday and the stuff gets picked up the next day. I like things where we don't have to have a lot of extra steps in enforcement, what public safety is. What's that?
We don't want the what ifs.
Well, I know, no, and again, don't disagree with what you're saying. I think it's all really good input. I just like to have stuff that operationally, it doesn't have a lot of different procedures and elements and this and that. But that doesn't mean that Warren and the city manager aren't going to continue to, I'll call it, I think, massage this and tweak it and come up with a plan that I think we'll all be really proud of, and the city will be proud, and the residents will be proud. So, so at this point, thanks, Warren, for sharing this with us. I guess this is directionally.
Yeah, this was part of the board's motion at the last meeting was we're approving this development agreement. We do want to proceed with the project. But we do want to be, again, I think the exact words, like, want to be provided with the site plan for, so we kind of know what it is we're going to be.
Okay.
Helping to construct.
So directionally, this is where you're headed.
Do we when do we approve this? Would be the next meeting or not at all?
Well, we don't specifically approve this, the city manager and
Just a
Warren
presentation.
just explained that. Yeah. All right. Do you want to take us through the,
Well, next would be next on our agenda is the financing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's,
let me read the agenda. Okay, go ahead.
So the next part of this is the kind of the second part of the development agreement. And it's the project financing agreement. So we've been working with the foundation. Again, we know we're going to be constructing this project. Even if, again, the site plan isn't 100%. But this agreement is rather short. Than the main components of it is it commits the TIFA to a $275,000 share in project construction costs. When the payment structure is such that it was $100,000 after the building permit to actually build this has been issued, that's like when the site plan and everything else is approved. If the engineers and building officials go ahead, the second component is another payment of $100,000. That's installment number 2. That's to be done within 45 days of the leveling course of concrete or similar material, essentially when the paved surface is put down. And then the final portion of the $275,000, so $75,000 remaining, is for when a building permit's final, a certificate of occupancy, even if it's a parking lot, there's still a cert C of O that's issued on it. When that part is done procedurally, that final payment would be released to the foundation, and who's going to be, again, the main financer and organizer of all the paying the contractors and stuff like that.
So a piece, and then the final when it's done.
Yes. And then there is just, I'll mention, and if anybody has any questions on the legal mechanics, because we do have our attorney here this evening, we do have a recoupment mechanism in here. So should something not pan out and there's a breach in contract that isn't cured or anything, that's there, any monies that have been paid by the TIFA so far would have to be returned to the TIFA.
And our TIF attorney has been involved with this.
He wrote this.
Yeah. So apparently he thinks it's a good document.
I do.
Good, thank you.
Okay, and if we wanted to discuss this one more, we'd probably be best to get a motion on the table and so kind of move forward in that
Do
regard.
we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion on the development agreement. Any comments, questions?
I think we beat it to death last meeting.
So the motion on the table to approve the financing agreement has been given and seconded. I don't have any questions or discussions, so let's go to a vote.
See something,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, or because we were accused on this from before, is this something that we're not gonna vote on then? I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, you recused yourself on the kind of the first component, so I'll
Development agreement.
yes, I'll defer to Attorney Kilby to kind of provide the guidance on this.
Yeah, this is technically gonna be an attachment to the development agreement,
That's what I
so
thought.
if you recuse yourself because of conflict from the development agreement, I would recommend you recuse
That's what I
yourself.
Just wanted to make sure.
Do we have to make a motion to accept their recusal? Okay,
We need to make a motion for.
yes, to accept their
You make
recusal.
I'll make a motion to accept the recusal.
I'll second. Okay, Do we have to vote on that motion? Okay,
Yes.
any discussion on that motion? Okay, on the motion, recusal, for Chamberlain and Seaford. I'm back. We'll take that roll.
Yes, I can take the roll. Who's no?
Yes, in favor.
Ralstrom,
Yes.
Distel,
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
and Chairman Hughes.
Yes. Okay, and now on the motion to approve the financial agreement.
That's what, oh, that's wrong.
That was to recuse.
See, I get lost too sometimes.
That was to recuse now,
Yep.
the motion to approve the financial
Make-
agreement,
Like
Please
make a
take roll.
motion to approve the financing agreement.
right? We already have that motion and seconded, we've had discussion.
No,
Yeah,
that's,
You need a second.
yeah, we still need a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on the financial agreement? Okay, please take roll.
On the other end, Distel,
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
who's no?
Yes.
Ralstrom,
Yes.
and Chairman Hughes.
Yes. Motion passes.
Great.
Next, one, you've given us the design for the, left behind Point Hardware. And, you know, there was, Arthur,
This one.
to give him credit, Arthur had a suggestion about, using the alley for parking spaces and having the easements not be the alley, but be the drive of the parking, which is a great idea. But the challenge is the two DTE poles, and one of them has that big stanchion on it. And we also had some pretty good input from DTE, unfortunately, when we were looking at the other side about moving those poles. So we walked over, looked at these poles and said, hey, can we move these? And he goes, oh yeah, you can do anything you want. But unfortunately, when they move those poles, it ends up being the resident's front yard with a stanchion going across his front yard. And I said, we're not doing that. So I think, well, when you mentioned that, I got pretty excited about it. Well, that's a great idea. But unfortunately, modern electricity is getting in the way of that. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I was just trying to
No.
look at how we
that was
double
great.
the parking
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, I was like all over it.
Yeah, and I think if I could, kind of give a kind of an overview, reached out to a local, architect on this one, just to kind of get a better sense of, I know it's a very small space. It is a single lot that was used historically for residential purposes that we're trying to, again, improve from its current state as a gravel parking lot. And, you can kind of look at, we don't need a 20-foot travel width when it's not, there's not two lanes of parking, there's just one lane. We have the DTE poles there, we have those wires, the anchor wire and so on. And this kind of shows space is really limited. If we kind of want to, I know kind of the intention is we're doing this great project right across the street. We want to do something that doesn't look so out of place on the other side. So we got 8 spots here, and I'm thinking it's more like 7. So I think we really got to have the setback a little bit more on the sidewalk. So I just kind of wanted the board to see how tricky of a site this is, and kind of just develop what are we thinking for improving the space, knowing that if we kind of do it, as close to the other one as we can, we're getting 7 spots. 7 spots for the money is a lot. We talked before we kind of had this on, just improving the surface, essentially paving it, putting up, arborvitaes or fencing along the south. And I've actually met with this homeowner, and spoken with him kind of on just the wall versus, a significant amount of arborvitaes or wooden fencing. And he's far more in favor of the arborvitaes and the fencing than, again, like a larger stone wall that's on the other lots. So I just I'm kind of looking at direction for the board as we kind of have this schematic. I still do need to retain the services of an engineer to to get a bid document out so we can actually bid this, but I kind of just want to evaluate, again, what's the resources we are willing to commit to this, to get the spots we want, to get the design that we want. And again, if you had a few $100,000 more, we could do things with the DTE poles and stuff. But we don't. So again, I'm kind of just looking at this, we've been talking about this one for a while, and because this one is kind of solo financed by us, that we need to strive for a high standard, but it's not going to be at the same level that what we can do on the other side. So at this point, really just looking for inputs and thoughts on kind of how to work within this space that we have here.
Want me to jump in, Warren? Here. How about if we eliminate the easternmost space? So that the reason being is, again, the zoning ordinance requires a 20-foot setback. And so
Mention that.
so that we get a 20-foot, we get close to a 20-foot setback if we eliminate that extra space. And then also the ordinance says we can have down to 8'6". These are showing 10 feet. If we go to 9-foot spaces, you end up even picking up another 7 feet. So you actually almost could squeeze in that 20-foot setback and have the landscape setback. And then the drive lane at this angle, 30-degree angle, requires a 15-foot wide driveway, and they show 18. If you buy 3 feet by going down to the 15-foot drive lane, you end up having 3 more feet to buffer the house on the south because the property owner's happy with the fence. The ordinance says that we're supposed to provide a wall, but I would say that we should provide the person with what they want. So I think that way we're providing more buffer for the next property owner by giving them 3 additional feet that can be landscaped on the south side. Taking out the 1 parking space to the east gives us almost the 20-foot setback. And there's not much else we can do. It's really small, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a petite.
Yeah, that's kind of,
It's a small
yeah,
lot.
that's we kind of put this together to show having somebody who's not me, who can actually do this stuff, kind of like Arthur. How do we work with this space? At this point, we have a decent feel of what we can actually fit in there. Now it's time to actually, again,
Do it.
bring put an engineer in who can actually, we can say, make me something like this that we can bid out and communicate with the contractor to do. That's kind of where we're at. I can do RFP for engineering design services. I could use the city. I could just go right to the city engineer. Want to be respectful of, kind of what the board wants me to go in this particular instance. So again, I do want to, I always want to give you the best deal I can on all the services, but we will need at this point to move forward with this. We will require the services of an engineer.
Right.
Can I make a motion?
Well, a couple more points.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to pursue this. It's a dirt lot now, and with the Taj Mahal lot across the street from it, well, it sticks out now. It's going to really stick out after that. So I think the right thing to do is to pursue doing this. I think it's reasonable to remove the space and create a little bigger buffer between the cars and the sidewalk. And there may be an opportunity for more of a buffer without creating a real maintenance intense type of thing, because our public service guys are strained already. So lower maintenance items. But yeah, I think it's something we ought to go for. So
Are these gonna be metered or not? What's the idea there?
That's, the larger lot, obviously with all its maintenance obligations and stuff, that will be metered, much like the block immediately next to it behind the Beaumont facility. This lot, I think there's some flexibility. I kind of thought that for the after hours, this could be a really good lot for the residential parking, to specifically allow residential parking during, certain hours, permit parking, for example. It's our property, the board can if the board feels like, this one we should meter or we shouldn't meter. It's, I serve at the pleasure of the board and I'm happy to kind of, and if you want me to kind of think about what kind of revenue could be generated off this and stuff, I wouldn't do a pay station for 7 spots. It would probably just be meters at each spot. Because the pay stations are really good for the high volume parking lots.
Could we have the pay station across the street cover
Yeah,
this
you-
lot?
In theory, you could even do that too with the programming now. It adds a step to whenever you go into, you just have to type in, you probably have to put a zone number and like zone 1 would be the big lot, zone 2. So you could, it depends on where the pay station's gonna go. And if we move some of the dumpsters around a little bit, that might shift the pay station.
I don't think that, obviously, we would generate a lot of revenue off of there, but being so that, it's to serve kind of as a customer for some of the businesses around, allowing it to just cars park there for, 2 days at a time. Being able to turn those spots is really what I think.
Well, to that
metering
point, I
helps.
mean, I think we could do, we could do the, I'm calling it metered, but whatever the system is during the day and then say after,
X
8 PM or 9
Yeah,
PM.
or perhaps
Then there's a
it's,
resident
perhaps
permit
it's like
option.
1 hour parking only during business hour. If you just put a sign up and kind of influence people's, but again, I will say though that I think there's a risk that if this one's paid and somebody sees this, I can park for free, that this
Right.
one will never be empty.
There's no question. There's no question.
Right.
If you don't put some sort of control on it,
Mhm.
I think the biggest problem is you're gonna get people that are gonna park their car there and leave it there for days at a
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think it's what Christina said is if you put meters in there and it's metered during the daytime and then after 6 o'clock, it's open, that's fine. And by having it metered in the daytime, it's gonna force somebody to take their car out of there and not leave it overnight.
So do we?
I'm sorry, one more question on the number of spaces. If we do remove that 1 space and bring it down to 7, could we, and again, I'm not a planner, are these wide spaces by normal standards? Is this, I don't wanna have a Kroger parking lot situation.
Yeah, 10 is wide.
Okay, it is, all right,
10,
thank you.
Is that the standard?
personal opinion, 10's a nice space.
Yeah, we're big car
When you-
people.
When you get to the smaller space, you start digging doors.
Yeah, exactly.
How wide is
Thank you.
Kroger's? Is that 6 foot or something? Over Kroger?
No, they're only 3 feet.
I was gonna say,
I'm not sure. I was going to check my parking deck and figure out what difference, but at an angle, at a partial angle, it's a lot easier to get in and out than a 90.
10 is kind of the standard now, I guess.
What's that?
10 foot wide.
I don't know.
No, I think it depends on the community. I see it all over the place. It's from 8.6 to 10.
So 10 is
So
general.
10 is on the high end.
Yeah.
But 8.6 would be the minimum.
Yeah, 8.6 is getting
There.
tight.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the space sizes in the fancy lot?
They're 9, I think, if I remember looking at them.
Yes, 9 feet.
They're 9.
Yeah.
yep, 9 feet.
Okay.
Warren, I have a question.
Yeah.
Help me understand. I have not physically looked at this lot. Reference was made to utility poles and things like that. Where are they on here? So
Yeah, actually, I can pull, I was gonna pull it up real quick. I might have a video of it. Actually, I did that.
So it's really kind of, you take out 3 or 4 cars here in a couple of years. And then you probably have to ballot them off by the time you ballot them off. You lose the benefit of parking in that space.
Here, 8 spots. The White House.
7.
Yeah, the White House.
Pick that one.
And there's also the alley going right into the garage door.
I think the poles are along the alley, right?
Yeah, they are parallel. They're not in the alley, but they're along.
Right.
This is a really good picture of what we're working with here.
There they are. There you go.
So in this kind of schematic I showed out, in working with the architect, I told him that we really can't do anything with this. So that's why on the plan, and again, it's not the finished product or anything, there's kind of that weird buffer area where we saw some more vegetation. I thought, again, we're gonna put a parking lot in here. This could be a place again where we could put, obviously we can't put a tree that'll grow into the wires, but we could do, something to make it a lot more visually appealing. We've got, no offense to Randy, this is just all brick. We could maybe kind of beautify that whole area by putting in some
Get a mural on the back of my store.
Yeah, wait, maybe you can put it.
Yeah.
Do it, we can do it.
Paint some trees.
All our faces and
And also to the pole that's closest to us in that image has a stanchion that comes back toward us. So it's not just the pole, there's a cable coming to the ground. I don't.
It's this one, actually.
Oh, it's the other one?
Yeah, it's right there, there it is.
That's the dumpsters that are going away.
Yeah, yes, thank God. That's, I'm sorry, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
And I think when we met with DT, it was actually this pole in the back. This is the one that's really affects those two. I don't know how it works, but that's this was a real problem pole.
They said there were over 6 circuits on them and a ton of data. And they said the electrical stuff was easier to move, but the data was just extremely cost prohibitive.
Yeah, you've got AT&T just put all their fiber through there now.
You've got all that fiber, AT&T, you've got Comcast, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's
Not to mention, they never remove the wires that, of the discontinued
Yeah.
customers either.
So, Warren, as you make your way back, so basically, is it that we give you direction? We don't have to vote on anything,
No,
but we give you
right.
direction to come up with a workable design and engineering, do an RFQ for engineering, then come back to us?
Yeah, I would essentially say using this document as a reference point, obviously, engineers will be able to enhance it.
I mean, you tweak it a little bit before you get it,
Yes,
so of course.
yes, I can do, again, I could,
Do we just want to go through the city engineer? Why go through a small? Then my recommendation is that we go through the city engineer because it's already been bid.
Right.
And instead of having someone bid on a small little, $6,000 project that's going to take Warren's time to
Yeah.
bid it, why not just go to the city engineer that's already been bid?
That's a great idea.
That would be, would be
Our city
part
engineer has
of
the
my
ability to do
motion.
that.
oh yeah, our engineer easily could,
You kind of alluded to that
yeah,
before. so-
I just, there's no hard and fast rule about spending limits and stuff with TIFA. My kind of thought would be, if we wanted to do that, if I go to the engineer and I get a price and let's say it's for not just design engineering, but it's for, some other component helping with the bidding and stuff. And if we're looking more than $12,000, that might be something where I'm one of those, there are numbers, there are concern about this on what I can spend.
Well, no, I guess the suggestion
Yeah.
is, if this is something the city engineer can do, and the city's already paying the city engineer, then have the city engineer do the engineering work.
Well, I think they'll bill us.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
they're not on retainer.
no, but what I'm saying is that they're already,
Yeah.
but
Thanks for explaining everything.
it avoids us wasting
Yeah.
staff effort.
Because our next meeting's in May, I could go into the engineer and easily get be ready to bid in May, build this thing and in theory,
Yeah.
ask the contractor across the street to maybe give us a pretty nice
Oh.
bid. I don't know if that'll work or not, but they're gonna be in the area anyway.
That makes sense to me.
And so get the lowest cost engineering work you can done, if it's a city engineer. And then let's figure it out and get an RFQ to
In
figure out, build
reality,
it.
it's if, we're already getting it done.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's gonna be out in the area doing work anyway, it's just.
So I guess we're telling you.
I will make a motion to request Warren work with the city engineer to bid, to design and provide us with a bid estimate.
I don't think we need to actually make a motion. I think we just give them the direction to do
Okay,
that.
sure.
Yeah, with whatever the board's comfortable, I'll go and do it. Yeah, I'll go and do it.
Alright.
Okay? Your direction is clear?
Yeah.
Work with the city
I won't
engineer?
spend $100,000 now.
No.
Within reason.
Yeah. Awesome. Very good. All right, next time.
Kevin, it's the next,
While we're on the old business real quick.
yeah.
There was some discussion about some parking stops and some intersections on Charlevoix. You
Yeah.
have a little update for that? If you could give that to us before we move on to the business,
Absolutely.
that'd be great.
Absolutely. At our last meeting, we saw comments on Charlevoix and just stop signs, parking, everything. And we're gonna talk about Charlevoix longer term streetscape stuff in a moment, but on Monday, there are over 10 traffic control orders throughout the city that are going to before the city council that have been put forth by the public safety director, one of which involves Charlevoix, specifically 2 intersections at Beaconsfield and Lake Point, where there are existing no parking, from here to corner. That's really should be moved a little back to kind of help increase the sight lines. Again, it might be losing a spot or two, but safety first,
Sure.
always. So those traffic control orders are going through for council on Monday for their ultimate, the chief can do it as a temporary order for 90 days on his own, and then council has to make it permanent. So DPW has already commenced, they got to do some concrete work to actually move these signs. The other traffic control orders have actually already all been accomplished. Like there's a stop sign going down on Essex. I don't know if it's in Pemberton, but somewhere down there, for example, that's one of them. But so that is already something we are doing now to help try and improve those sight lines. We thought that was a better approach than just putting, a bunch of stop signs right there now. I kind of defer to the chief for that type of things. And then as we get into streetscapes and how we can do to just enhance the area in general, again, I just wanted to make everybody aware that's coming next Monday to council. Actually, some action on that to try and mitigate those concerns.
Good. Thank you for that. All right, are we ready to move forward on to the new business? Consideration of the preliminary fiscal year 2024 budget. I warned everyone here has provided input to Warren and I, and we've taken that input and put together a preliminary budget recommendation for the 24 budget year, fiscal year. And so I think Warren was able to comprehend inputs from everyone. So I think it's a reasonable budget, very reasonable budget, and it gives us some flexibility and the opportunity to do some good things. So Warren, take it away, please.
Sure. And I'll have it's not a PowerPoint, Kevin, so you're just gonna have to like that. Yeah. And then we all have it in front of us too. So yeah, starting off with revenues, this is an estimated number. In March every year, near the end of March, after board review is complete, we know the final number. So by the time of our next TIFA meeting, this number will be finalized based on taxable value. I'm sure we all got our notice of assessments in the mail last weekend or two. I know I did in Chesterfield Township, so those are always fun to get.
Thanks for reminding us.
But we are estimating revenues at $1,156,000.
And that's over how, increase over?
I think we're at almost 100,000 at least, I think, over the previous year's estimates. The last few years, we have been growing our revenue by about 100 grand a year because of the very attractive housing markets. The housing market, the taxes always lag behind, so the market has a few good years. Even though if the market's not so good now, we're still in the seeing the rewards of those good years, as well as all the development happening, as the properties turn over, as new construction happens, all of that. And from basically not the library, but everything north of the library from, Weyburn to Nottingham, we capture, which is all our commercial areas. So anytime we see growth there, we see increment revenue, and that's where we get our name from, Tax Increment Finance Authority. So why don't we go, Kevin, thank you. So kind of the first general category is our administrative and debt expenditures. As we're kind of figuring out where things we can put in the budget, was able to see savings in those salaries and fringes, as well as legal services. Legal services, there might be padded a little. I didn't know if we were gonna do like another development agreement type thing next year, but otherwise we see savings all around. The DPW loan is gonna be paid off in 2036. Interest rate on it again was 1.94% for a $4 million principal. And the debt is, back when it was originally approved, it was close to the 35% of our budget. We're actually down already to 26% of our budget. So unless the housing market has a major downturn in the assessor, that number, I anticipate that percentage to continue to decline over time. Any questions on those before I advance? I did want to point out pedestrian front lighting. It's a very popular program. It had historically been, never mind. I flipped it and I didn't pay attention. I'm sorry. No, that's why I saw it. I apologize.
Keep up with us.
Where'd the dog go? Is he still there? That's my job. Traditional programs and priorities. So these are some of our categories that have historically been in our budget. One of the increases that we did was the pedestrian front yard lighting. Those are all like the mock gas lights we have. We've historically been about $15,000. I wanted to increase that to $25,000. I get a lot of calls on and just inquiry on that. And we have a contractor who's kind of been doing that for quite some time, has a lot of the knowledge. He's due back in early April, so
Yeah, we'll step it up a little.
people can start, when they call the city and say, now is the time, and it might be worth looking at, other contractors too, or whatever. I'm not really sure the history of it, but we did want to increase it because we thought it was really important. Marketing promotions, this is a line item that's used for support of the business association, the after six events, things like Chili Fest. That's some of those, the more community events, and features of those events are paid for by contributions from TIFA. Last year we had 90,000 in grants, or I guess this fiscal year. This year we're and it was for any and all programs, commercial and residential. With this upcoming budget, we're still maintaining the residential grant components, but we're also separating an allocation just for commercial grants. We have $75,000 for that program. And that's basically facade enhancements, some fencing, maybe even some dumpster enclosures, perhaps, some of our other areas. But that's in that budget as well. Any questions on these areas at the moment? All right, let's keep going. So residential. So we wanted to increase this, and we wanted to, again, continue our popular residential grant program. All but two grants that we did of the 90,000 this past year were for residential projects, for both fences and some, garage rehabilitation, parking pad, pourings, things like that. For this year, I want to continue all of those elements, but I also want to expand and create a new category for facade improvements. So things like porches, steps, still kind of working out exactly what is in a facade, but what I'm thinking is if the board is in favor of this, I can come at our May meeting, which again, we can't start spending this money until July 1, and kind of like I did last year, present hey, here's the different, I wanted to add the fences last year. So I was kind of thinking of a similar thing as far as the grant program goes.
Yeah, and I think the way to think about this is whatever items that are included in this are orientated toward benefiting the district, i.e. Adding parking spaces, parking pad, or improving a garage so there's a place to park. Improving a facade, appearance of a front building to improve the look and appearance of the neighborhood. Those are things that have more of a global benefit to the area, and that's what our charter is. Economic development and redevelopment. So the things that we'll avoid are things that are very individual, like while they're great ideas, are replacing a hot water tank or putting different
Interior things that can't be
interior
seen,
things
right?
that no one sees, but that are very individually benefited. They're great, but that's unfortunately beyond the scope of what we're about.
We're looking at exteriors.
Pardon me?
We're looking at the exteriors.
Yeah, things that have a facing appearance type of improvement. And also fences. We talked about front fence and
The fences have turned out really well. The grants I've been able to do definitely improves the alleys.
And there's also opportunities for example, when we talked about improving the looks of our alleys, one item is, we came up with the idea, I'm not sure who did, but it was like, why wouldn't there be a discounted opportunity for residents to acquire a dumpster and a
Garbage can.
a garbage can, a tote, or the recycle bins. And or ability to plant trees in their front yards. I mean, because we are a tree city, and those are all good. Those are all good things. So, those are things we can do, and we have to be careful not to, come up with a list of 50 things and not do anything. So we'll try to stay focused.
And a note on the tree planting program, it's nice garbage cans and stuff are. I asked the city forester, knowing that I was gonna be giving this kind of talk today, that, how many properties are without trees in the TIFA? And the number he came up with, he gave it to me earlier today, was about 116, which I know we're a tree city and there's trees everywhere, but I was like, that's actually a pretty big number of places where there are no street trees. And I think, and you know, Arthur especially can say that trees, and everybody likes the trees, and when they're in the right of way, you don't really have to take care of them. So, you know, everybody, you know, the city, you know, we have a forestry and forestry department that can do stuff like that. So, you know, I think, again, coming back in May, as we do this budget and council kind of formally gives us the go ahead, I'll come back with, probably bring the forester in and be like, here's how we're gonna run this. And again, we're not gonna force trees on people who don't want them, but that's, I can think of a few
Who are
things.
these people that don't want the trees?
There might be one or two.
How dare you?
No, into my phone card.
I know.
There was a request to increase this amount from 160 to 170. I don't have an issue
City will
with
take
that.
care of them.
Wanted to take that out of promo or projects. When we approve this, I'd like to suggest that we do, if we get to the point where we approve the budget, I'd like to suggest that we approve it with an amendment to increase this to 170 from 160. If that's okay. I don't know when we do that later or what.
Up to the board. The board can do it before it sends the budget up to council for approval. It can keep the 160 in there. If it gets close to spending the 160 throughout the year, it does its normal budget amendment in its course during the budget cycle. So you can do it either way.
Okay. Whatever's easy.
Okay, why don't we go through everything, and then after we've gone through everything, we can talk
I'll
about.
revisit the 170.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Parking system investments and development. We have, obviously, we're gonna be completing our two larger parking lots this year. But there's still more work to be done. We have a very antiquated payment collection system. So we've put money in here to purchase 3 of the new parking lot pay stations. These are probably gonna be the ones that are used in Grosse Pointe City right now. That's the Loop 2 pay station. They've been switching over the last few years. It's very popular, and there's a really good vendor in Michigan that supports these. So that's one you potential use for this assortment that I plan on bringing to the board. We actually, in the development agreement, we're responsible for doing that part of when we don't have to take care of the plants and stuff, but we do have to take care of collecting the money and keeping the money too. So we're gonna have to spend a little money to make that part work. I also think after we have all these parking lots throughout the business areas, not just necessarily on Kirksville, but throughout, I think there could be better signage. Like this is, you know, city parking lot A, this is city parking lot B, something like that. You know, that's the wayfinding signage can go a long way. And even if it's not necessarily on the lot, but it's a sign on the corner that says parking this way or Point Hardware that way, you know, those types of nice aesthetic signs could be something we use in this area. And then just kind of further, you know, the other recommendations in that parking study that talks about parking permits. It also talked about things like parking meter equipment and signage too. It's, we wanted to make sure that goal was able to be accomplished. So that's what this assortment is for. Any questions on this one before we move on? And we can always come back to it after I've gone through everything, so.
Do you have any intel on whether council is going to be moving forward with any kind of like not the same or compatible parking systems for the street parking? It, you know, it seems kind of crazy that we're gonna have these great lots, you know, nice machines, and then the street parking is still.
Outdated.
Yeah, I think from the,
Quarter,
Yeah.
nickels, dimes.
yeah, I think, you know, and this could be a role for TIFA, sure, to help accelerate that. I think it comes in phases over time. I know that and the other thing though is we're gonna talk about streetscapes. Actually, this next slide is streetscapes. Before we figure out what's going in the street, we might want to figure out if we're even gonna keep the street in its current form. So that's kind of why I thought start with the parking lots, which we know are going to be stationary. And then when we do the streetscape project, perhaps that's one of the big things we look at is how do we, obviously, we're not going to keep 30-year-old parking meters on the streets anymore as we're doing those types of improvements.
I mean, it would be nice too if they all kind of coincide with all the points too, like the city, so we don't have 3 different apps.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Or, you know.
Yeah. And I know we are looking at changing the app too, which could easily, which may happen if once these first initial pay stations are purchased. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Streetscapes. This one, streetscapes are, depending on the scope, can be very expensive when we get to construction and stuff, but we need to get plans in place first. We got to get a vision so we can execute that vision. So we did set aside $150,000 for that type of work. We're not going to spend $150,000 on planning stuff. No, that is also intended for if we're going through the plans or if we're kind of identifying some of the more short zones, there a critical section of the brick that we gotta, take care of, or is, again, like if it's on Charlevoix, we need to do some crosswalk enhancements, maybe some bump outs as part of a kind of like a phase one. We can actually get start some of the construction done and those type of elements taken care of. So that's 150. We're not going to spend 150 just on getting a drawing and getting a plan. Because multi-year phasing of things depending on how the board decides to what the ultimate vision is. We can always do large projects. We kind of did with the DPW. We did take some of our money, turned it into debt. Not sure we want to do that now, but it's the crowds up, what we can do in the future. But again, I think these are streetscapes that came up almost, I think every single person talked about doing something to the streetscapes, even if it's just improving what's there now to,
Make
from a
it look
safety
enticing
standpoint.
to stay here, to come here, make it look.
Yeah, we have an opportunity.
We do.
And what it does is it perhaps can be a catalyst for other businesses to reinvest or do things as well if they see the city kind of taking the lead.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what our role is take that lead to encourage others to follow.
And not just bricks, but if there's like landscaped areas in the right of way, even that we could do some maintenance, immediate improvements too in the short term.
Very good.
Absolutely. Lastly is on the concept of reserve, and we have to be careful with the word reserve with Public Act 57 and reporting. We can't just capture taxes from other people without saying what we're going to do it for. So I kind of have this category in here now. I'm going to propose that we keep it for future streetscape projects. Obviously, if the board has flexible, if we need to move it to other categories, we can, but we do kind of have to assign it to something. So as of now, I kind of figured as we do the plans and it's a few $100,000 in our next fiscal year budget, a year from now to actually to finish the construction we've worked out on the streetscapes, this could help, go towards that. But again, I don't want to, it's not just there. It's not a rainy day fund for us. It's a strategic reserve to go towards these projects in the future. Going to have costs.
And it can't be, and I was just telling a client last night, you can't call it, we don't want to be calling it a project reserve because the taxing jurisdictions that are giving us this money can reclaim it. So we want to assign it to specific projects, but we can take money from that project, but it is really a place where we're collecting money for a future project. But we need to assign it to a future project. It can't be unassigned money.
You got it.
It has to be appropriated somewhere. And I think appropriating it to build a fund for streetscape is warrants on the right path. I just want to give you the reason why we have to do this, because the taxing jurisdictions, I haven't seen it. I just don't want to give people the ammunition from Wayne County or the community college or the library to say, hey, why are you taking this money and not spending it on projects?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have to fill a report out every year that says what we're doing with it. So no. And it is balanced. That's more, we didn't mention that, but revenues and expenditures are balanced in this budget. Every penny is accounted for. Happy to answer any other questions, have discussion. Real quick though, Kevin, why don't you just explain what do we need to do today and what happens next? Because the city council is involved in this process.
Yeah, motion to approve the preliminary budget and send it to council for final.
Okay, so council is the one who ultimately, I'll go to the city council meeting when they do the other budget and I'll do this exact same presentation essentially. And once they give us the green light, then we can, again, the fiscal year starts, they're going to give us the green light in May. Fiscal year is effective in July 1. So that's when kind of the work can begin. So I want to get as much as possible done for the May meeting so we can kind of, approve the streetscape plan engineering. We can do some other, parking stations. We can have all of that ready to go in May. knowing it'll take a month or two to get, really working in when the bills
Right.
start trickling in,
Okay.
so.
Any questions, comments?
Nice job.
Good. Again, no, I would suggest to the committee, nice job on the committee, because this represents the inputs from everyone here.
Thank you very much. It
No,
really
thank
made my
you.
job easier.
No, yeah, and you made my job easier because I didn't have to get on the phone and hound you all. So it's appreciated. It's a very good committee.
So I just wanted to commend you, Chair Hughes, and you wanted to get all the hard work that you've done and you put up with the entire different boards, a group. I think it's well done, very well done.
Thank you, Ken.
At what point did I make my, guess we have to have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the recommendation as proposed and forward it to city council for their review and approval.
Do we want to also include that we increase the residential to 170 from 160 in that?
I can make an amendment to that. The motions, I guess we have to approve the motion, and then I can make an amendment, or how, what do you think is best, Jen? Or city attorney?
You have a motion on the floor in a second,
No second.
We don't have a second yet because
so you can restate the first original motion. If we have a second on that, that's fine. Otherwise, you can keep the motion, get a second, and make a proposed amendment to the motion and take action on the proposed amendment before you vote on
Or so we can make a new motion.
we're just a new motion altogether.
Let's make a new motion.
it. There you
A
go.
motion with 170, is that what people would like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make the motion to amend the proposed budget $70,000 for the residential.
And I'm gonna take it from reserve, because it's got a balance.
Take it from our future project fund.
Yes, future project fund.
And that we will then, and we recommend this budget to city council for adoption.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Lauren, please take roll.
Who's not?
Yes.
Secor.
Yes.
Hagley.
Yes.
Ralston.
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
Hanford.
Yes.
Robson.
Yes.
Mullen.
Yes.
And Chair Hughes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Nice work, everyone. The last agenda item is adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I have motion. We
Second?
Second.
Can Stormy second that?
Stormy, a second, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? All opposed? None. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your input.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
It's gonna be end stream. Yep.
And then do I?
Residential.
And then we're actually voting into it.